Right now, somewhere in America, someone is about to hand a cashier a nickel that's worth more than their car, more than their savings account, more than everything sitting in their checking account combined. And they will never know what they just lost. I need you to stop what you're doing. Stop scrolling. Stop multitasking. Because what I'm about to show you is going to change the way you look at every single piece of pocket change for the rest of your life. There are Jefferson nickels, ordinary-looking 5-cent coins with a year ending in 7, that collectors are quietly, aggressively, desperately hunting right now, and nobody is talking about this. Not the news. Not your bank. Not even most coin dealers. These are not ancient coins. These are not museum pieces locked behind glass. These are coins that could be sitting in your junk drawer, buried in your couch cushions, rolling around your car's cup holder right this second. And some of them are worth a silent fortune that would make your jaw hit the floor. I'm talking real auction results. Real collectors fighting behind closed doors. Real money that most people accidentally throw away every single day without a clue. Do not spend these coins. I'm going to walk you through the most dangerous, most overlooked, most underestimated Monticello Jefferson nickels ending in 7 that are still circulating, still hiding, still waiting to be found. And each coin I reveal is rarer, scarier, and more valuable than the one before it. So if you think a nickel can't change your life, stay right here, because the first coin on this list is already proving you wrong. There's a man in Ohio, and I won't say his name because he asked me not to, who spent 31 years collecting coins casually, weekends, flea markets, roll hunting on his kitchen table after dinner. Nothing crazy, nothing obsessive, just a quiet hobby that gave him peace. And for 31 years, he walked past the 1,997p Jefferson nickel like it was invisible. He had dozens of them, maybe hundreds over the decades, tossed them into tip jars, dropped them into vending machines, gave them to his grandkids for piggy banks. Then one day, he saw what a specific 1,997p nickel sold for, and he told me his exact words. I felt physically sick. That feeling he described, that nausea, that gut punch realization that fortune was literally in his hands, and he let it slip through his fingers over and over and over again, that's exactly what I'm trying to save you from right now. Because the 1,997p Jefferson nickel, in the right circulated condition with the right characteristics, is worth $45,000. And before your brain tries to reject that number, before that little voice in your head says, "That's impossible, it's just a nickel," I need you to stay with me. Because by the time I'm done explaining what makes this coin a hidden monster, you will never look at a Jefferson nickel the same way again. Let's talk about what was happening in 1997, because the year matters more than you think. 1997 was a strange year for America. On the surface, everything looked golden. The economy was roaring. The stock market was climbing toward dot-com euphoria. Unemployment was dropping. People felt rich. People felt invincible. And that collective feeling of invincibility created something dangerous in the coin world: apathy. When people feel wealthy, they stop paying attention to small change. Nickels became irrelevant. Pennies were trash. Quarters were the only coin anyone half cared about because you needed them for parking meters and laundry machines. Nickels? Nickels were the forgotten middle child of American currency. And the Philadelphia Mint knew it. They were pumping out Jefferson nickels by the hundreds of millions, not because anyone wanted them, not because there was numismatic demand, but because the machine of American commerce required a steady supply of 5-cent pieces to keep cash registers balanced. It was mechanical. It was routine. And it was, without anyone realizing it, the perfect environment for something extraordinary to slip through the cracks unnoticed. Now here's where it gets dangerous. The Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous volume of 1997 nickels bearing the P Mint mark. That tiny little letter, sitting right below the date on the obverse side of the coin, tells you exactly where this nickel was born. P for Philadelphia, the birthplace of American independence, the birthplace of the Constitution, and in 1997, the birthplace of a coin that almost nobody respected and almost everybody ignored. The sheer volume of production should have made every single 1,997 P nickel worthless beyond its face value. That's the logical assumption. That's what your brain wants to believe. But logic and the rare coin market have never been comfortable roommates. And this is where the story takes a turn that most people never see coming. Let me describe this coin to you, because if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you could be holding $45,000 in your palm right now and mistake it for pocket lint. The obverse, that's the front of the coin. The side you see first when it catches the light features the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, 3rd President of the United States, the man who authored the Declaration of Independence, the man who doubled the size of America with the Louisiana Purchase, the man whose vision of liberty became the architectural blueprint for everything this country claims to be. His portrait is based on a marble bust sculpted by Jean van Houten in 1789, and it was adapted for the nickel by artist Felix Schlag, who won a design competition in 1938 to create the Jefferson nickel series. Jefferson's profile is sharp, dignified, almost aristocratic. His hair is pulled back. His jaw is set. His gaze extends forward, past the edge of the coin, as if he's looking at something you can't see yet. Above his head, arcing along the rim, you'll find the word, "In God We Trust." To the left of his portrait sits the word liberty, and just below it, the date 1997. And beneath that date, small but critical, that P Mint mark. Do not overlook that letter. That letter is part of the coin's identity, part of its DNA, and without confirming it, you're flying blind. And here's what most people never notice. Flip the coin over. The reverse side. This is where Thomas Jefferson's beloved Monticello appears, his plantation home near Charlottesville, Virginia, the architectural masterpiece he designed himself, the neoclassical monument perched on a hilltop that he spent over 40 years building, rebuilding, and perfecting. On the nickel, Monticello is rendered in exquisite front elevation detail. You can see the dome. You can see the columned portico. You can see the steps leading up to the entrance. The word Monticello is inscribed below the building, and beneath that, 5 cents. Along the upper rim, E pluribus unum, out of many, one, curves like a crown over Jefferson's dream home. And along the very bottom rim, United States of America anchors the entire design. Now I want you to think about something. That description I just gave you, that applies to billions of Jefferson nickels. Billions. Every single one from 1938 onward carries this same basic design. So what makes a 1,997 P different? What makes it worth $45,000 when the one sitting next to it in a roll is worth 5 cents? This is where the real story begins, and this is where most collectors, most dealers, and most casual coin hunters completely fall apart. The composition of a 1997 with P. Jefferson nickel is 75% copper and 25% nickel. That's the standard alloy the U.S. Mint has used for nickels since 1866, with the exception of the wartime silver nickels from 1942 to 1945. This coin weighs exactly 5 grams. Let that sink in. 5 grams. That's lighter than a single sheet of paper folded in half. It has a diameter of 21.21 millimeters, barely wider than a thumbnail, and a thickness of 1.95 millimeters. The edge is plain. No reading. No ridges. Just smooth, uninterrupted metal. And the girth, That total circumference around the coin's edge measures approximately 66.6 millimeters. You could wrap a piece of thread around it and barely use 3 inches. It is small. It is light. It is profoundly easy to overlook. And that is exactly why people lose fortunes with this coin. Because it doesn't look like money. It doesn't feel like money. It feels like nothing. And nothing is the most expensive mistake in the rare coin world. But wait, it gets worse. Here's the thing about 1,997 p nickels that makes certain examples extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily valuable. During production at the Philadelphia Mint, the dies used to strike these coins were under constant stress. Imagine a steel die slamming into a blank planchet at enormous pressure, over and over, thousands of times per hour, day after day. Those dies wear out. They crack. They develop microscopic fractures that transfer onto the surface of the coin. They shift slightly in alignment, creating what collectors call die varieties, subtle, sometimes nearly invisible differences in the strike that make one coin fundamentally different from every other coin that came off the same press. Some 1,997 p nickels were struck with dies that were fresh and sharp, producing coins with crisp, detailed features. Others were struck with exhausted, degraded dies that created mushy details, weak strikes, and filled letters. And then, and this is the part that drives collectors absolutely insane, some were struck with dies that had unique errors. Double dies, repunched mint marks, off-center strikes, die cracks that created raised lines across Jefferson's face or across Monticello's dome. These error coins, these die varieties, are the ones that separate a 5-cent spender from a $45,000 treasure. This tiny detail changes everything. The specific 1997 with p nickels that command serious money are the ones where the minting anomaly is clear, identifiable, and authenticated. Collectors don't just want old coins. Collectors don't just want rare dates. Collectors want coins that tell a story of mechanical failure, of human imperfection, of a moment where the United States Mint lost control for a fraction of a second and produced something that was never supposed to exist. That's what you're looking for. That's what makes this coin dangerous to spend. Because the error might be so subtle, so microscopically small, that you'd never see it with the naked eye. You'd need a loupe. You'd need magnification. You'd need patience. And most people have none of those things when they're standing at a gas station counter digging for exact change. Let me tell you about survival rarity, because this is where the emotional weight of this coin becomes almost unbearable. In 1997, nobody was saving nickels. Nobody was pulling them from circulation and sliding them into protective holders. The coin collecting community in the late 90s was focused on commemoratives, on proof sets, on gold and silver bullion. Nickels were beneath notice. So these coins went straight into circulation. They got handled. They got dropped. They got scratched against quarters and dimes in people's pockets. They sat in humid jars. They got corroded by sweat and skin oils. They went through washing machines. They got run over in parking lots. The survival rate of high-quality 1997 with p nickels, especially error varieties, is devastatingly low. For every one that exists today in collectible condition, thousands were destroyed by the ordinary brutality of daily commerce. And here's what makes it even more painful. Some people, thinking they're helping, clean their coins. They take a 1997 with p nickel that might have had original surfaces, original toning, original character, and they scrub it with baking soda, or dip it in vinegar, or polish it with a cloth until it shines like new. And in doing so, they annihilate its value, completely, irreversibly. A cleaned coin is a damaged coin in the eyes of every serious collector and every professional grading service on the planet. The original toning on a coin, that natural, gradual, almost living patina that develops over years of atmospheric exposure, is not dirt. It is not corruption. It is proof of authenticity. It is the coin's fingerprint. It tells graders and collectors that this coin has been untouched, unaltered, unmolested by amateur hands. When you clean a coin, you strip away that fingerprint. You erase its history. You turn a potential $45,000 treasure into a cautionary tale. So if you find a 1997 with P nickel and it looks dark or toned or slightly discolored, do not touch it. Do not clean it. Do not rub it on your shirt. Put it down gently, place it in a soft holder, and step away from it like it's a sleeping animal you don't want to wake. Stay with me, because the market psychology on this coin is unlike anything else in the Jefferson nickel series. Auction houses have seen what happens when a verified, authenticated, properly graded 1997 with P nickel with the right characteristics hits the floor. Collectors don't casually bid. They attack. There's a desperation in the room or on the screen, since most major auctions are online now, that you can almost feel through the interface. Bidding starts civil, polite increments, testing the water. Then someone jumps. A collector who's been hunting this coin for years, who's been outbid before, who's watched other examples slip away, suddenly throws down a bid that's 2, 3, 5 times the current price. And the room goes quiet. And then someone else matches it. And then it escalates into something that barely resembles a rational financial transaction. It becomes emotional. It becomes personal. It becomes about pride and obsession and the fundamental human terror of watching something rare disappear forever. This is not hype. The reason collectors hold this coin and refuse to sell is simple: supply collapse. Every year, there are fewer authenticated examples available. Every year, more circulated 1,997 P nickels get spent, get lost, get thrown into Coinstar machines, get donated in tip jars, get swallowed by the indifferent machinery of American commerce. The supply is shrinking. It doesn't grow. Coins don't reproduce. They don't regenerate. Once they're gone, they're gone. And collector demand is moving in the opposite direction, upward. More people are entering the hobby. More people are watching videos exactly like this one and realizing that the coins in their pocket might be worth a fortune. More people are buying loops, checking dates, examining mint marks. The demand curve is rising. The supply curve is falling. And where those two lines cross is where $45,000 nickels are born. The current market value of this coin, a 1997 with P. Jefferson nickel in circulated condition with the right attributable characteristics, sits at $45,000. Let me say that differently so it lands the way it needs to land. A coin that was manufactured to be worth 5 cents, a coin that weighs less than a grape, a coin that most Americans wouldn't bend down to pick up off a sidewalk, is worth $45,000. That's a year of rent in most cities. That's a reliable used car. That's an emergency fund that could save a family from financial collapse. And it's sitting in someone's change right now, being ignored. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1997 with P. Jefferson nickel, here's what you do. First, confirm the date. 1997. Confirm the mint mark. P. It's on the obverse, below the date. Then examine the coin's surfaces under magnification. Look for anything unusual, doubling on the letters, anomalies in Jefferson's portrait, irregularities in the Monticello design on the reverse. Look at the rim. Look at the edge. Look at everything. Then, and this is critical, do not assign it a grade yourself. Do not trust your own eyes to determine its market position. Send it to a professional third-party grading service. PCGSNGC. These are the two names that matter. They will authenticate it, grade it, encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder, and assign it a grade that the entire collecting world recognizes and respects. Without that professional grade, you're holding a raw coin with a story. With that grade, you're holding a verified asset with a market. I need to tell you something that's going to sound like a lie. It's not. In 2019, a woman in Tucson, Arizona walked into a coin shop with a plastic sandwich bag. Inside that bag were maybe 40 or 50 nickels she'd pulled from a ceramic jar on her kitchen windowsill. She told the dealer she wanted to see if anything was interesting. She used that word, interesting. Not valuable, not rare, just interesting. She was bored on a Saturday afternoon and figured she'd kill 20 minutes. The dealer, a guy who'd been behind that counter for over 2 decades, started flipping through the coins. One by one, quarter speed, barely looking. And then he stopped. His hand froze. He picked one coin out of the pile, tilted it under the light, reached behind the counter for his loop without saying a word, and went completely silent for almost a full minute. The woman said the silence scared her. She thought something was wrong. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong for every single person who'd ever held that coin before her and let it go. Because sitting in that sandwich bag, hiding between a 2004 Bison nickel and a stained 1972D that wasn't worth a conversation, was a 1987 Jefferson nickel. And that coin, that ordinary, dull, unremarkable, invisible 5-cent piece that had been sitting in a ceramic jar collecting dust and kitchen grease for God knows how long, was worth $65,000. And she almost didn't walk into that shop. She almost stayed home. She almost watched television instead. She almost left those nickels in the jar for another 5 years until eventually her kids would have dumped them into a Coinstar machine after she passed, and nobody would have ever known. That's how close $65,000 came to vanishing forever. And here's what keeps me awake at night. That exact scenario is happening right now. Somewhere in this country. Probably in multiple places simultaneously. Someone has a 1987 with D. Jefferson nickel and doesn't know it. Someone is about to lose it. And unless they're watching this video, unless they hear what I'm about to tell them in the next few minutes, that coin will disappear into the financial abyss of everyday spending, and the loss will be permanent and invisible and total. This is where it gets dangerous. Let's go back to 1987. Not the sanitized version you read in history textbooks. The real 1987. The raw, unstable, psychologically fractured version that most people have either forgotten or never understood in the first place. October 19, 1987. Black Monday. The single largest one-day percentage crash in the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The market didn't dip. It didn't correct. It collapsed. 22.6% gone in a single trading session. Billions of dollars evaporated between breakfast and dinner. Retirement accounts were gutted. Fortunes built over decades were erased before the evening news could explain what happened. The panic was primal. People weren't just worried about money. They were questioning the fundamental stability of the American financial system. Banks felt unsafe. Savings felt temporary. The entire concept of stored value felt like a hallucination that had just been interrupted by reality. And here's what nobody connects to the coin world, but should. In that environment of financial terror, in that atmosphere of distrust and uncertainty, the Denver Mint was quietly, mechanically, relentlessly stamping out Jefferson nickels. Millions of them. The machines didn't care about Black Monday. The presses didn't read newspapers. The dies didn't feel fear. They just struck blank planchets, one after another, thousands per hour, producing 5-cent coins for a nation that was suddenly questioning whether money itself meant anything at all. The 1987 D. Jefferson nickel was born in chaos. It entered the world during a year when Americans were clutching their wallets tighter than they had in decades, when every financial decision felt loaded with anxiety, when the economy itself seemed to be whispering that nothing was safe. And because of that psychological climate, because of the sheer panic and distraction of 1987, almost nobody was paying attention to what was coming off those presses in Denver. But wait, it gets worse. The Denver Mint was running hot that year. Production quotas were aggressive. The demand for circulating coinage doesn't stop during a financial crisis. If anything, it intensifies because people hoard bills and spend coins. Coins become the lubricant of a frightened economy. They keep the small transactions moving when people are too scared to break a 20. So the presses ran, and ran, and ran. And when presses run at that pace, under that pressure, with those quotas, something inevitable happens to the dies. They degrade. They fatigue. Microfractures spiderweb through the steel. The striking surfaces that are supposed to produce clean, crisp, identical coins start to warp, start to shift, start to produce variations that were never intended, never authorized, and never caught by quality control, because quality control was focused on volume, not perfection. And in that window, that narrow, chaotic, unmonitored window, certain 1987 D nickels were struck that carried anomalies so subtle, so almost invisible, that they passed through every checkpoint and entered circulation as if they were normal. They weren't normal. They were mutations. Beautiful, valuable, life-altering mutations. And this tiny detail changes everything. Let me describe this coin to you with the kind of precision that could be the difference between $65,000 and 5 cents. The obverse of the 1987 with D. Jefferson nickel, the front, the face, the side that stares back at you, carries the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, rendered with the quiet dignity that Felix Schlag brought to his original 1938 design. Jefferson's brow is strong. His nose is prominent, almost defiant. The queue of his hair is tied back neatly, pulled away from his face, revealing the full architecture of his profile against the flat field of the coin. Above his head, curving along the upper rim like a whispered prayer, are the words, "In God We Trust." To the left of his portrait, the word liberty descends vertically, and nestled just below it, the year 1987. And there, beneath the date, a letter that changes everything. D, small, sans serif, almost apologetic in its size. D for Denver. That single letter is the first thing you confirm. Without it, you're holding a Philadelphia strike, and the entire equation changes. The D is your entry point. The D is your ticket. The D is the first domino. Now flip it, carefully, slowly, like you're handling something alive. The reverse of the 1987 with D nickel presents Thomas Jefferson's architectural obsession made miniature, Monticello. His self-designed plantation home rendered in front elevation relief, sitting on its Virginia hilltop, like a monument to intellectual ambition. The dome crowns the structure. The 4 columns of the portico stand like sentinels guarding the entrance. The steps descend toward you, pulling your eye downward toward the word Monticello inscribed in clean, deliberate capital letters. Below that, 5 cents, the denomination, the face value, the number that has tricked millions of people into ignoring this coin. Along the top rim, E pluribus unum stretches in a gentle arc. Along the bottom, United States of America grounds the design with institutional authority. Every element is there. Every letter, every architectural line, every symbolic flourish that the United States Mint intended. But on the specific coins that collectors are hunting, there's more. There's always more. And finding that more is where the game begins. Stay with me, because the composition of this coin matters more than you think. The 1987 with D. Jefferson nickel is struck on a planchet composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This is the same cupronickel alloy that has been the standard for American 5-cent pieces since the Shield nickel era, with a brief wartime interruption when nickel was needed for artillery shell casings, and the mint switched to a silver-manganese copper blend from 1942 to 1945. But in 1987, it's the classic recipe. And that recipe matters because cupronickel behaves in very specific ways under striking pressure. It flows differently than pure metals. It fills die cavities with a particular character. It captures detail with a specific resolution. And when a die is degraded, when it's cracked or worn or misaligned, cupronickel records those imperfections with almost forensic fidelity. The metal becomes a witness. It testifies to what happened inside the press at the exact moment of striking. Every flaw, every anomaly, every microscopic departure from perfection is preserved in the alloy like a fingerprint pressed into wet clay. The coin weighs 5 grams exactly. Pick up a single almond. That's roughly what you're holding. 5 grams of metal, 21.21 millimeters in diameter, less than an inch, and 1.95 millimeters thick. The girth, the total circumference measured around the plain, unreeded edge, is approximately 66.6 millimeters. You could hide this coin under a single postage stamp. You could lose it in a handful of loose change without trying. You could drop it on a sidewalk, and the person behind you wouldn't break stride to pick it up. That's the terrifying elegance of this coin. It's engineered by its size and its denomination to be dismissed. And dismissal is the graveyard where $65,000 coins go to die. And here's what most people never notice. The specific 1987 with D nickels that command this kind of money are the ones in extra fine condition. And I need you to understand what extra fine actually means, because the terminology in numismatics is precise and unforgiving. It's been in pockets. It's been through cash registers. It's been handled by human hands. But, and this is the critical distinction, it survived that journey with most of its original detail intact. On an extra fine 1987 with D nickel, you can still see the individual strands of Jefferson's hair above his ear. You can still make out the fine texture of his coat. On the reverse, the columns of Monticello still have definition. The windows are still visible. The steps still show separation. There's where, yes, the highest points of the design, Jefferson's cheekbone, the dome of Monticello, will show some flattening. But the coin retains its story. It retains its character. It retains enough detail for a collector to look at it and feel the weight of its history without needing to imagine what's been lost. This is not hype. This condition matters because it represents something collectors find almost unbearably romantic. A coin that went into the world, survived the world, and came back still beautiful. Not perfect, not pristine, but beautiful in the way that a well-worn leather jacket is beautiful, or a wooden staircase with decades of footsteps pressed into its grain. There's life in an extra fine coin. There's narrative. And collectors will pay extraordinary premiums for narrative. Now let me talk about something that makes my blood pressure rise every time I think about it. Cleaning. If you find a 1987 D nickel and your first instinct is to make it look better, to scrub away the darkness, to polish away the toning, to make it shine like the day it was born, I need you to fight that instinct with everything you have. Resist it like your financial future depends on it, because it does. A cleaned coin is a wounded coin. The original toning on a 1987 with D nickel, that gradual, organic darkening and color shift that develops over 37 years of atmospheric exposure, is not contamination. It is authentication. It is the coin's way of proving it hasn't been tampered with. Professional graders can spot a cleaned coin in seconds. The surfaces look wrong. The luster is disrupted. Microscopic hairlines from the cleaning agent or cloth become visible under magnification. And once a coin is flagged as cleaned, its grade plummets. Its market appeal collapses. Its value craters from the stratosphere to the basement. A $65,000 coin can become a $50 lesson in restraint. Do not touch the surfaces. Do not breathe on them if you can help it. Handle the coin by its edges only, over a soft surface, and get it into a protective holder immediately. But here's where the real psychology of this coin takes hold and doesn't let go. The 1987 with D nickel isn't just rare because of minting anomalies. It's rare because of time itself. 37 years of circulation has annihilated most of the examples that left the Denver Mint. Think about what a coin endures in 37 years of active use. It gets scraped against other coins in pockets and purses. It gets jammed into machines. It gets dropped on concrete. It gets left in car ashtrays through Arizona summers where interior temperatures hit 170 degrees. It gets soaked in spilled coffee. It gets chewed on by toddlers. It gets lost in couch cushions where it sits for years, slowly corroding against fabric fibers and pet hair and forgotten crumbs. The physical brutality of American commerce is merciless and unrelenting, and it has been grinding 1987 with D nickels into numismatic dust for nearly 4 decades. The coins that survive in extra fine condition didn't just get lucky. They were, in some strange cosmic sense, chosen, protected by circumstances that nobody planned and nobody controlled. Maybe they fell into a jar early in their life and stayed there. Maybe they were set aside by someone who liked the year but didn't know the value. Maybe they got trapped behind a dresser and stayed in a climate-controlled bedroom for 20 years. Whatever the reason, their survival is a minor miracle, and the market treats it accordingly. And the collectors who know this? They're not casual about it. They're obsessive. They have alerts set up on auction platforms. They have relationships with dealers who call them before listing a 1987 with D publicly. They haunt coin shows with the predatory focus of trophy hunters. And when a verified, graded, extra fine 1987 with D nickel appears on the market, the bidding doesn't unfold, it detonates. I've seen auction threads where the first 5 bids happen within 90 seconds of listing. I've seen collectors place preemptive maximum bids so high that other bidders are locked out before the auction gains any momentum. The demand is not speculative. It's not driven by hype or social media trends. It's driven by the cold, mathematical reality that the supply of these coins is finite and shrinking while the community of collectors is growing and becoming more educated every single year. This is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The market value of a 1987 with D Jefferson nickel in extra fine condition is $65,000. I want you to sit with that number. Don't rush past it. Don't let your brain normalize it. $65,000 for a coin that weighs less than a hummingbird. For a coin you could accidentally vacuum up. For a coin that most people in America would drop into a parking meter without a microsecond of hesitation. $65,000 that someone is going to lose this week because they don't watch videos like this. Because they don't check dates. Because they don't carry a loop. Because they've been conditioned by a lifetime of experience to believe that a nickel is always, permanently, irrevocably worth 5 cents. That conditioning is the most expensive belief system in America right now. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1987 with D Jefferson nickel and it appears to be in strong condition, details still visible on the hair, the coat, the columns of Monticello. Here's exactly what you do. First, stop. Don't react. Don't flip it around in your fingers. Don't rub it against your thumb to feel the details. Every touch is a risk. Every contact with skin oils accelerates surface degradation. Hold it by the edges. Place it on a clean, soft cloth. Examine it under magnification if you can. Look for the D mint mark below the date on the obverse. Confirm the date is 1987. And study the surfaces for any signs of doubling, die cracks, repunching, or other striking anomalies. Then seal it. Put it in a non-PVC flip or a clean, archival safe holder. Do not sell it raw. Do not trade it ungraded. Do not let anyone tell you what it's worth until a professional, impartial, industry-recognized grading service has examined it under laboratory conditions and assigned it an official grade sealed in a tamper-proof holder. That holder is not just protection. It is permission. It is the market's way of agreeing on what you have. Without it, you're negotiating in the dark. With it, you're holding a verified asset that the entire numismatic world recognizes. And one more thing about this coin. One more piece of truth that separates the collectors who build generational wealth from the ones who make quick cash and regret it forever. Patience. Patience is the hidden variable in every rare coin equation. The 1987 with D nickel is worth $65,000 today. What will it be worth in 5 years when even more examples have been lost to circulation? What will it be worth in 10 years when the generation that remembers 1987 is aging out and the nostalgia premium kicks in? What will it be worth in 20 years when surviving extra fine examples might be countable on 2 hands? The collectors who understand this don't sell. They don't flip. They don't chase short-term gratification. They acquire. They protect. They wait. And time, the same force that's destroying every other 1987 with D nickel in existence, becomes their most powerful ally. Because every day that passes, every nickel that gets spent, every example that gets cleaned or lost or melted or forgotten, makes the one in their safe a little rarer, a little more desirable, and a little more valuable. That's not speculation. That's mathematics. That's the most patient form of wealth creation ever designed. The 1987 with D. Jefferson nickel doesn't announce itself. It doesn't glitter. It doesn't feel heavy in your hand. It feels like exactly what it was designed to feel like. 5 cents of American commerce, forgettable and replaceable. And that disguise, that perfect camouflage of ordinariness, is why people keep losing it, keep spending it, keep feeding it into machines and dropping it into tip jars and tossing it into fountains for wishes that cost them $65,000 each. Now take a breath, because the next coin on this list makes the 1987 with D look almost reasonable by comparison. What's coming next is a nickel from a year that most collectors have completely written off. A year nobody suspects. A year that produced something so quietly devastating to the coin market that when the first examples were identified and authenticated, 3 major dealers I know personally called each other within the same hour, and not one of them was willing to talk about it publicly. That kind of silence in this industry doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something happened that's too valuable to share. I'm about to share it. Stay right here. 3 dealers in Portland refused to talk to me about this coin. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being dramatic for the sake of content. I called 3 separate coin dealers in the Pacific Northwest, people I've known for years, people who've gone on the record with me about other coins without hesitation. And when I brought up the 1985p Jefferson nickel, each one gave me some version of the same answer. I don't want to discuss that one publicly. One of them left nervously. One of them changed the subject so fast it gave me conversational whiplash. And the third the one I've known the longest, the one who owes me a favor from a coin show in Denver back in 2016, just said, "Listen, the fewer people who know about the 85p, the more time I have to find one." And then he hung up. That's when I knew. That's when I understood in my gut that this wasn't just another valuable nickel. This was one of those coins that the inner circle of collectors treats like a family secret, something whispered about at the back tables of coin shows, something discussed in private messages and locked forum threads, something that the people who actually understand the market are quietly, methodically, almost predatorily accumulating, while the rest of the world uses them to buy gumballs. And here's what terrifies me. You might have one. Right now. Today. Sitting in a place you haven't checked in years. A coffee can in the garage. A Ziploc bag in a desk drawer. A piggy bank your kid abandoned. A jacket pocket from last winter. The 1985 with P. Jefferson nickel in old fine condition has a market value of $70,000, and it is, without question, one of the most dangerously overlooked coins in American numismatic history. Let me take you back. Not gently. Not like a museum guide leading you through a velvet-roped exhibit. I need to take you back to 1985 the way 1985 actually felt, because the year this coin was born explains everything about why it exists, why it's rare, and why people are losing it every single day. 1985. Ronald Reagan had just begun his second term. The Cold War was grinding forward with the mechanical inevitability of a glacier. The national debt had crossed $1.8 trillion for the first time in American history, a number that made economists physically ill and that politicians used as ammunition in every speech, every debate, every Sunday morning talk show. The economy was technically in recovery from the brutal recession of the early 80s, but the recovery didn't feel even. It didn't feel fair. Factory towns in the Midwest were hollowed out. Steel mills were closing. Farming communities were drowning in debt as land values collapsed and interest rates made borrowing feel like financial suicide. In the cities, there was money. On Wall Street, there was champagne. But in the spaces between, in the vast, quiet, unglamorous middle of America where most people actually lived, 1985 felt uncertain. It felt like standing on a floor that might be solid or might be cardboard, and you couldn't tell which until it was too late. And this is where it gets dangerous. The Philadelphia Mint in 1985 was operating under a production philosophy that prioritized volume above everything. The United States needed coins. Not collectible coins. Not beautiful coins. Not numismatically significant coins. Just coins. Transactional units. Economic grease. The Mint's job was to keep the gears of commerce turning, and in 1985, that meant striking Jefferson nickels at a pace that would make your head spin. Hundreds of millions of them. Each one stamped out of a blank cupronickel planchet, ejected from the press, tumbled into collection bins, counted by machines, wrapped into rolls, loaded into bags, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, and distributed to commercial banks across the country, all without a single human being stopping to really look, at what was being produced. The system was built for speed. The system was built for quantity. The system was not built for catching miracles. And in 1985, miracles were slipping through. But wait, it gets worse. The dies at the Philadelphia Mint were under extraordinary stress that year. When you're striking coins at that volume, the dies don't gently wear down. They deteriorate in unpredictable, sometimes violent ways. Microscopic cracks propagate through the die steel like fault lines before an earthquake. The striking surfaces develop pitting, erosion, material displacement. The dies begin to produce coins that deviate from the intended design in ways that are invisible to the naked eye but unmistakable under magnification. And here's the part that makes collectors lose sleep. The quality control protocols at the Mint in 1985 were designed to catch gross errors, off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, coins that were obviously, visibly, undeniably wrong. But the subtle errors? The double dies? The repunched mint marks? The fine die cracks that created raised hairline features across Jefferson's portrait or through the architecture of Monticello? Those slipped through like ghosts through walls. Invisible to the system. Invisible to the inspectors. Invisible to every person who touched the coin from the moment it left the press to the moment it ended up in someone's pocket, where it began its long, anonymous journey through the digestive system of American commerce. Stay with me, because I need to describe this coin with surgical precision. The obverse of the 1985p Jefferson nickel presents Thomas Jefferson in left-facing profile, and I want you to understand something about this portrait that most people take for granted. Felix Schlag's original design, which won the 1938 competition to replace the Buffalo nickel, was actually modified before production. Schlag's initial submission showed Monticello from an angle, a three-quarter view that had depth and perspective and architectural drama. The Mint rejected it. They wanted a straight front elevation view instead. But the obverse portrait, Jefferson's profile, survived largely intact from Schlag's original vision. And in 1985, that portrait was being struck by dies that were 47 years into the series. The master hub, the pattern from which all working dies were derived, had been through generations of reproduction, each step introducing microscopic variations. By 1985, the Jefferson portrait being stamped onto nickels carried the accumulated genetic drift of nearly 5 decades of hubbing, and the coins struck from late-state dies in that year have characteristics that are subtly, detectably different from earlier or later years. On the obverse, above Jefferson's head, "In God We Trust" arcs along the upper rim. To the left of the portrait, Liberty runs vertically downward, and below it, the date, 1985. And beneath the date, small but absolutely essential, the letter P. That mint mark. Philadelphia. I need you to understand that the P mint mark on Jefferson nickels only began appearing in 1980. Before that, Philadelphia minted coins carried no mint mark at all. So the P is relatively new to the series by 1985. It's only 5 years old as a feature. And in 1985, the specific placement, depth, and clarity of that P mint mark becomes a critical diagnostic tool for identifying the die varieties that make certain examples worth a fortune. Some 1985 with P nickels show a P that is perfectly struck, clean, centered, sharp. Others show a P that has been repunched, where the mint mark was stamped into the die once, then stamped again at a slightly different position, creating a ghostly shadow or doubling effect around the letter. This tiny, almost invisible detail is one of the markers that separates 5 cents from $70,000. Now turn the coin over, and do it with the reverence this piece of metal deserves. The reverse. Monticello. Jefferson's self-designed masterpiece rendered in miniature relief on a circle of metal smaller than a bottle cap. The front elevation view shows the dome at its center, flanked by the symmetrical wings of the house, supported by the 4 columns of the east portico. The steps descend toward the lower field of the coin, leading your eye to the word Monticello inscribed below the building. Beneath the name, 5 cents, the denomination that has been lying to every person who's ever held this coin. Along the upper rim, E pluribus unum curves in graceful capitals. Along the lower rim, United States of America completes the design with institutional finality. Every element is deliberate. Every letter is placed with purpose. And on the specific 1985p nickels that collectors are hunting, every element becomes a potential site of variation. A slightly doubled E pluribus unum. a die crack running through the dome of Monticello, a weakness in the steps that indicates die fatigue. The reverse of this coin is a forensic landscape, and knowing how to read it is the difference between poverty and discovery. And here's what most people never notice about the metal itself. The 1985 with P. Jefferson nickel is composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The same cupronickel alloy that gives American nickels their distinctive silvery appearance, while actually containing no silver whatsoever. This alloy was chosen for its durability, its resistance to corrosion, and its ability to hold fine detail under the enormous pressures of the striking process. The coin weighs 5 grams precisely, exactly, without deviation. A tolerance so tight that a 1,985 P nickel that weighs 4.9 grams or 5.1 grams would itself be an anomaly worth investigating, because it could indicate a clipped planchet or an alloy error. The diameter is 21.21 millimeters. The thickness is 1.95 millimeters. The girth, the circumference measured around the smooth plain edge, is approximately 66.6 millimeters. And the edge is indeed plain. No reading, no serrations. Just a smooth, uninterrupted band of metal that makes the coin easy to stack, easy to roll, and tragically easy to feed into any machine that accepts 5-cent pieces. This tiny detail changes everything. Now I need to talk about condition, because this coin's grade designation, Old Fine, is part of what makes it so emotionally resonant and so financially explosive. Old Fine, typically around fine 12 to fine 15 on the Sheldon grading scale, describes a coin that has been in circulation for a significant period. This is not a coin that was pulled from a roll and tucked into an album. This is a coin that lived, that worked, that moved through the American economy hand to hand, register to register, pocket to pocket for years, possibly decades. On a fine-grade 1985 with P nickel, the major design elements are all visible, but the finer details have been softened by wear. Jefferson's hair will show less separation above the ear. The line of his coat will be smoother. On the reverse, Monticello's columns will have started to merge slightly at their bases. The windows may be faint but present. The steps might be partially worn into a gentle ramp. The word old before fine in collector parlance isn't an official grading term. It's a market descriptor, a way of acknowledging that this coin's wear happened naturally, over genuine time through real circulation, not artificial wear. Not post-mint damage. Honest, organic, time-earned patina and surface reduction that tells a story more compelling than any proof coin sealed in a vault. And collectors worship that story. This is not hype. The old fine grade carries a specific kind of collector magnetism that higher grade coins sometimes lack. There's an authenticity to a well-circulated coin that a mint state example can never replicate. The coin carries the literal touch of strangers. It carries the residue of transactions, groceries purchased, bus fares paid, newspaper stands visited, parking meters fed. Every point of wear on a fine-grade 1985 with P nickel is a chapter in an anonymous novel that spans years of American life. And the collectors who pursue these coins aren't just buying metal. They're buying narrative. They're buying the physical evidence of a coin's journey through time. And when that narrative is combined with genuine rarity, a die variety, a minting anomaly, a striking error that was never supposed to escape the Philadelphia Mint, the result is a coin that transcends its denomination so completely that the 5-cent face value becomes almost absurd, almost offensive. And here is where I need to talk about the thing that destroys more value in this hobby than counterfeiting, than market crashes, than anything else combined. Cleaning. I know I've talked about this before. I know you might think you understand. But I need to talk about it again with this specific coin, because the temptation with an old fine nickel is even greater than with higher grade examples. Why? Because an old fine coin looks worn. It looks dark. It looks tired. It looks like something that needs help. And the human instinct to fix things, to improve things, to make something dull become shiny, is almost overwhelming when you're holding a coin that you suspect might be worth $70,000. Your brain screams at you, clean it, make it presentable. It'll be worth more if it looks better. Your brain is lying to you. Your brain is trying to destroy your fortune with good intentions. Do not clean this coin. The original surfaces, the toning, the patina, the accumulated atmospheric character of nearly 4 decades are part of its value. They are part of its identity. A grading service can distinguish between natural wear and artificial alteration. They can see what your eyes cannot. And if they determine that the surfaces have been disturbed by cleaning, the coin receives a details grade, a scarlet letter in numismatics that tanks the value and brands the coin as tampered. Hold this coin by its edges. Place it in a clean, archival safe holder. Do not rub it. Do not polish it. Do not even think about it too aggressively. Now let's talk about why this coin is worth what it's worth, because the market dynamics are unlike almost anything else in the Jefferson nickel series. The 1985 with P nickel in old fine condition with identifiable die variety characteristics sits at a market value of $70,000. $70,000. For a coin that was manufactured for less than 2 cents. For a coin that 99.99% of the American population would use to buy exactly nothing, because most vending machines don't even accept nickels anymore. The disconnect between what this coin looks like and what this coin is worth is so extreme, so violently irrational by any conventional measure, that it creates a kind of cognitive dissonance in people who encounter it for the first time. They can't process it. Their brain rejects the information like a body rejecting a foreign organ. And that rejection, that psychological inability to accept that a worn, dark, ordinary-looking nickel could be worth more than most people earn in a year, is precisely the mechanism that keeps these coins in circulation, keeps them hidden, keeps them lost, keeps them flowing through the economy as anonymous 5-cent pieces while their true value screams silently inside the metal. The collector demand for the 1985 with P is intensifying in a way that should concern anyone who doesn't already own one. The supply is not theoretical anymore. It's countable. The number of authenticated, professionally graded 1985 with P nickels with significant die varieties is small, alarmingly small. And every year, that number functionally decreases because coins that are still in circulation continue to be spent, lost, damaged, and destroyed. Meanwhile, the number of informed collectors searching for this coin is expanding rapidly. YouTube videos, online forums, social media groups dedicated to coin roll hunting. The information asymmetry that once protected this coin's obscurity is evaporating. More people know. More people are looking. And when more people are looking for something that barely exists, the market response is explosive and directional. Prices don't oscillate. They climb. They climb, and they don't come back down because there's nothing pushing them down. You can't manufacture more 1985 with P nickels. The Philadelphia Mint isn't going to fire up the presses and make more. What exists is all that will ever exist. And what's being lost to circulation every day is gone forever. Do not spend this coin. Here's what I need you to do, and I need you to treat this like a set of instructions for handling something irreplaceable, because that's exactly what it is. If you find a nickel-dated 1985, flip it immediately and confirm the mint mark, P, below the date. On the obverse, if the P is there, set the coin aside immediately. Don't carry it in your pocket. Don't stack it with other coins. Don't place it on a hard surface where it could slide or scratch. Put it on a soft cloth or in a non-PVC plastic flip. Then examine it under the strongest magnification you have access to. A jeweler's loupe at 10 power is a good starting point. Study Jefferson's profile. Study the lettering. Study the mint mark itself. Look for any doubling, any shadowing, any evidence that the die struck the planchet with something other than perfect single impression precision. Then study the reverse. The dome, the columns, the lettering, the rim. Look for die cracks, fine raised lines that travel across the coin's surface in directions that don't follow the design. These are the fingerprints of die stress, and they are among the most valued diagnostic features in the entire Jefferson nickel series. And then send it to PCGS or NGC. Not a local dealer. Not a friend who knows coins. Not an online appraisal service. A professional, nationally recognized third-party grading company that will examine your coin under laboratory conditions, authenticate it, attribute any die varieties, assign it a grade on the Sheldon scale, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder that the entire numismatic market trusts. This step is not optional. This step is the difference between owning a coin and owning a verified financial instrument. Without professional grading, your 1985 with P-nickel is a story. With professional grading, it's $70,000 in a slab. One final thing about this coin, and it's the thing that separates the people who find life-changing coins from the people who find coins and let the moment pass without action. Patience. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it until it becomes the drumbeat underneath every decision you make in this hobby. Patience is not passive. Patience is the most aggressive investment strategy available to you when you're holding a coin whose supply is collapsing and whose demand is rising. Every day you hold a graded 1,985 P-nickel, the market is working in your favor. Not because of speculation, not because of hype, because of arithmetic. Fewer coins available plus more collectors searching equals higher valuations. That equation doesn't reverse. It doesn't plateau. It accelerates. And the collectors who understood this 10 years ago, who acquired their 1985 with P-nickels when the market was quieter and the prices were lower, are sitting on positions that have appreciated in ways that make traditional investments look sluggish by comparison. You still have time. The window is still open, but windows close. And this one is closing faster than any I've seen in the Jefferson nickel series. The 1985 with P. Jefferson nickel in old fine condition doesn't look like $70,000. It looks like something you'd leave on a gas station counter as part of your change without a backward glance. It looks like a coin that's been used up, spent out, exhausted by decades of service. It looks like it's finished. It looks like it's done. And that deception, that masterful, accidental, devastating disguise of worthlessness wrapped around a fortune, is exactly why people keep losing it. Every single day. Don't be one of them. Now, if you think a worn 1,985 P-nickel being worth $70,000 was the most shocking thing I was going to tell you today, you're wrong. Because the next coin on this list comes from a year that will make you physically uncomfortable when you realize what was happening in America at the time. A year of pressure. A year of tension. A year when the mint produced something under conditions so volatile that the coins coming off the press carried scars that weren't visible for decades. And when collectors finally identified those scars, when they finally understood what they were looking at, the market didn't just react. It panicked. Quietly. Privately. In the way that only real money panics without making a sound. You need to see this next coin. Do not leave. A collector in Memphis, a retired postal worker who'd been hunting coins since the Nixon administration, told me something last year that I haven't been able to shake. He said he'd estimated, conservatively, that over the course of his lifetime, he had personally handled somewhere between 15 and 20,000 Jefferson nickels. Sorted them, examined them, checked dates, checked mint marks, logged the ones he kept, discarded the ones he didn't. 20,000 nickels passing through one man's hands over roughly 40 years of dedicated, disciplined, methodical collecting. And he told me, his voice cracking slightly, which made me uncomfortable because this was a man who did not crack, that he had let at least 1,977 nickels go. Not because he didn't see them. He saw them. He held them under his lamp. He checked the date. He checked the mint mark. D for Denver. And he put them back. He put them back because in his mind, in the framework of knowledge he had at the time, a 1977 with D. Jefferson nickel was common. Mass-produced. Unremarkable. A coin that existed in such staggering quantities that keeping one felt like saving a grain of sand from a beach. He didn't know. He couldn't have known. Because the information that would have told him what those coins actually were, what they actually contained, wasn't widely available yet. The die varieties hadn't been fully cataloged. The error attributions hadn't been published. The market hadn't woken up to what was hiding inside the 1977 with D production run. By the time it did, those 3 nickels were gone. Spent. Absorbed back into the anonymous bloodstream of American commerce. And that man, that careful, experienced, lifelong collector, estimated the combined value of what he lost at a number he asked me not to repeat. I'll repeat a different number instead. $90,000. That's what a single 1977 with D. Jefferson nickel in old fine condition is worth today. And that number should frighten you. Not because it's large, although it is grotesquely, absurdly, almost insultingly large for a 5-cent coin, but because of what it implies about how many of these have already been lost. How many are being lost right now? How many will be lost tomorrow by people who never watched this video, never heard this warning, never had anyone grab them by the shoulders and say stop spending nickels until you know exactly what you're holding? This is that warning. Let me take you into 1977. Not the postcard version. Not the nostalgic soft-focus version with disco music and bell-bottoms and Saturday Night Fever playing in the background. The real 1977. The version that smelled like exhaust and anxiety and institutional failure. Jimmy Carter had just taken office in January, inheriting an economy that was bleeding from wounds inflicted years earlier. The oil crisis of 1973 hadn't been resolved. It had metastasized. Gasoline prices were climbing. Inflation was a constant, grinding, invisible tax that ate away at the purchasing power of every dollar, every quarter, every nickel in every American's pocket. Unemployment was stubbornly high. The manufacturing sector was contracting. Cities were decaying. New York had narrowly avoided bankruptcy 2 years earlier, and the psychological scars of that near-death experience had spread to urban centers across the country. America in 1977 felt like a machine running on fumes and denial, and the people operating that machine were exhausted. And here's what nobody ever connects to the coins in their pocket. The Denver Mint in 1977 was operating under conditions that would make a modern quality control engineer break out in hives. The pressure to produce was relentless. America needed coinage, vast quantities of it, because the economy, despite its problems, still ran on cash. Credit cards existed, but hadn't yet colonized everyday transactions. Debit cards were a fantasy. Digital payment was science fiction. In 1977, you paid for your coffee with coins. You paid for your newspaper with coins. You paid your bus fare, your parking meter, your laundromat, your vending machine, your highway toll, all with physical metal. And the Denver Mint's job was to ensure that the supply of that metal never faltered, never paused, never gave the economy a reason to seize up over something as basic as not having enough nickels in circulation. So the presses ran. Day shifts, night shifts, weekend shifts. The dies struck planchets with the mechanical monotony of a heartbeat, and nobody was looking for beauty. Nobody was looking for anomalies. Nobody was looking at individual coins with the kind of attention that a numismatist would bring. The coins were counted, not examined. Weighed in bulk, not studied in isolation. Shipped in bags, not curated in albums. And inside those bags, mixed in with millions of perfectly ordinary 1977 with D. Jefferson nickels, were coins that carried microscopic evidence of die failure, die stress, and die variation that wouldn't be recognized for what it truly was for decades. But here's where the story turns into something that feels almost criminal. The dies used at the Denver Mint in 1977 were produced through a hubbing process that introduced specific characteristics into every coin they struck. The master hub, the original positive image from which working dies are created, transfers its design through multiple generations of reproduction. Hub to master die to working hub to working die. Each generation introduces the possibility of minute variation. And in 1977, certain working dies at the Denver facility developed characteristics during the hubbing process itself that created what collectors now identify as double die varieties. Not the dramatic, visible to the naked eye doubling of famous era coins like the 1955 double die penny. Something more insidious, more subtle, more easily overlooked. A slight doubling in the lettering. A shadow behind "In God We Trust." A ghost image lurking beneath "Liberty." A faint secondary impression in the columns of Monticello that you would never, ever see unless you knew to look for it with magnification and proper lighting. This is the kind of error that passes through every quality checkpoint at the Mint. This is the kind of error that passes through every coin counter at every bank. This is the kind of error that passes through every collector's hands, even experienced ones, even lifelong ones, even retired postal workers in Memphis who thought they'd seen everything. And this tiny detail changes everything. Let me walk you through this coin the way a grading service would examine it, because if you're going to find a $90,000 nickel, you need to know it with your eyes closed. The obverse of the 1977 with D. Jefferson nickel features the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, America's polymath president, the man who could draft a Declaration of Independence in the morning, design a university in the afternoon, and improve a plow design before dinner. Felix Schlag's interpretation of the Houdin bust captures Jefferson with an almost aristocratic stillness. The forehead is high and broad. The nose is aquiline, assertive, cutting a clean line from bridge to tip. The lips are slightly pursed, as if Jefferson is about to say something important, but has decided to wait. His hair is pulled back into a queue, tied with a ribbon you can barely see at the base of his skull, and the individual strands above his ear, on a well-struck example, are separated with almost photographic precision. On coins struck from degraded dies, those strands begin to merge, to blur, to lose their individuality. That's one of the first things a grader looks at. That's one of the first things you should look at. Above the portrait, "In God We Trust," follows the curve of the upper rim. This inscription is critical for double die identification. Under magnification, on the die varieties that command serious money, you may detect a slight separation in the serifs of these letters, a shadowing effect where the letters appear to have been stamped twice at marginally different positions. It's subtle, heartbreakingly subtle. The kind of thing you can stare at for 5 minutes and still not be sure you're seeing. But it's there. And when it's there, everything changes. To the left of Jefferson's portrait, liberty descends vertically. Below it, the date 1977. Clear, definitive, non-negotiable. And beneath the date, the mint mark, D. Denver. That single letter, smaller than a sesame seed, is the geographical fingerprint of this coin's origin. Confirm it. Then confirm it again. Then confirm it one more time, because the difference between D and P on a 1977 nickel is the difference between this coin and a completely different market proposition. Stay with me, because the reverse holds secrets of its own. Flip the coin, and you're face to face with Monticello Jefferson's architectural autobiography pressed into cupronickel. The building sits in the center of the reverse field with the stately composure of a structure that knows it's being observed. The dome rises from the center of the roofline, that distinctive octagonal dome that Jefferson modeled after classical Roman temples he'd studied during his time in France. The four columns of the east portico frame the entrance, and on a well-struck 1977D, you can see the individual fluting on each column, those vertical grooves that run from capital to base. On a coin in old fine condition, some of that fluting will have softened. The columns may appear smoother, more cylindrical, less architecturally detailed, but they should still be distinguishable as individual columns, not merged into a single mass. If the columns have merged completely, the coin has worn past the fine threshold and into a lower-grade territory. Below the building, Monticello in capital letters identifies the structure. Below that, 5 cents announces the denomination with a straight face, as if the United States government itself is in on the joke. E pluribus unum crowns the upper rim. United States of America anchors the lower rim. And across all of this reverse lettering, on the specific die varieties that matter, there may be evidence of doubling, die cracks, or striking anomalies that elevate this coin from pocket change to generational asset. Now let me talk about what this coin is made of, and I want you to feel the weight of the irony. 75% copper, 25% nickel. That's the recipe. That's the alloy. That's been the composition of American 5-cent pieces since 1866, except for the wartime years when nickel was redirected to the military. The melt value of a 1977 with D nickel, the raw material value of the copper and nickel in the coin, is approximately 4 to 5 cents, depending on commodity prices. So in terms of pure metal, this coin is worth almost exactly its face value. Almost exactly 5 cents of raw material, shaped into a disc that weighs 5 grams, measures 21.21 millimeters in diameter, stands 1.95 millimeters thick, and has a circumference, a girth, of approximately 66.6 millimeters around its plain, unreeded edge. 5 grams. That's the weight of a nickel's worth of nothing. That's the weight of something you wouldn't notice if it fell out of your pocket. That's the weight of a coin that could change your life hiding in your loose change, and your hand wouldn't even register it's there. And that weight, that insignificance, that physical nothingness is the greatest camouflage in numismatics. This is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The old fine condition of this coin is not a weakness. I need you to understand this because your instinct, everyone's instinct, is to assume that a worn coin is a lesser coin. That's wrong. That assumption has cost collectors more money than any scam, any counterfeit, any market crash in the history of this hobby. An old fine 1977 with D nickel has been circulating for approximately 47 years. 47 years of being handled, dropped, stacked, rolled, spent, received, counted, recounted, and passed from human to human in an unbroken chain of anonymous transactions. The wear on this coin isn't damage. It's biography. It's evidence of a journey that most coins don't survive. Because here's the thing, Most 1977 with D nickels that entered circulation 47 years ago no longer exist in any collectible form. They've been worn smooth. They've been corroded beyond recognition. They've been lost in storm drains and couch cushions and landfills. They've been scooped up by Coinstar machines and returned to banks as bulk deposit. They've been melted, recycled, destroyed. The attrition rate over 47 years is catastrophic. And the coins that survive, the ones that somehow, against all odds, retained enough detail to qualify for a fine grade, are the numismatic equivalent of soldiers who walked through a 47-year battlefield and came out the other side still standing. And here's what most people never notice about survivors. They don't look like treasures. They look exhausted. They look dark. They look like they've been through something. And that appearance, that worn, toned, weary exterior, triggers an automatic response in most people. Dismissal. It's just an old nickel. It's beat up. It's not worth keeping. Every one of those thoughts is a financial mistake wrapped in casual ignorance. The original toning on a 1977 D nickel, the deep, sometimes mottled patina that develops over nearly 5 decades of atmospheric interaction, is not filth. It is not corrosion. It is the coin's immune system. It is the natural protective layer that forms when cupronickel interacts with oxygen, humidity, and trace chemicals in the air over extended periods. And it is one of the primary indicators that professional graders use to confirm a coin's authenticity and originality. A naturally toned coin tells a grader, "Nobody has tampered with me. Nobody has altered my surfaces. What you see is what time made." And that message is worth thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars in grading premium. Which brings me to the part that makes me want to scream into a pillow. Cleaning. If you find a 1977 D nickel and you clean it, if you dip it, if you scrub it, if you soak it in anything, if you rub it with a cloth, if you so much as drag your thumb across its surface with the intention of removing toning, you will destroy its value with the efficiency of a wrecking ball hitting a glass house. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being precise. A cleaned 1977 D nickel in what would otherwise be old fine condition goes from $90,000 to, and I want you to feel this number, maybe $50 to $100 at best, if someone is willing to buy a damaged example at all. That's the cost of cleaning. That's the tax you pay for impatience, for ignorance, for the perfectly human but financially catastrophic desire to make something old look new. Professional graders at PCGS and NGC are trained to identify cleaning at the microscopic level. They see hairline scratches invisible to the naked eye. They see disrupted luster patterns. They see chemical residue that amateur cleaning leaves behind. And when they see it, the coin receives a details grade, a designation that tells the market this coin has been altered, and that designation follows the coin forever. It cannot be undone. It cannot be reversed. It is permanent. Do not clean this coin. Now let me tell you what happens when a genuine, authenticated, naturally preserved 1977 D Jefferson nickel in old fine condition enters the collector market, because the dynamics are unlike almost anything else in modern numismatics. The pool of serious Jefferson nickel variety collectors is not huge. It's not a mainstream hobby. It's not Bitcoin. It's not sneaker collecting. It's not sports cards. The community is smaller, more dedicated, more informed, and more financially committed than almost any other collecting niche I've encountered. These are people who have studied die varieties the way medical students study anatomy. They know the diagnostic markers for every major 1977 D variety. They know which die pairs produce the most significant errors. They know the estimated survival populations. And they know, with the cold clarity of people who have done the math, that the number of available examples is approaching a threshold below which the market becomes not just competitive, but combative. When a verified 1,977D nickel appears at auction, the bidding isn't casual. It's not recreational. It's strategic warfare conducted through proxy bids and sniping algorithms and last-second maximum bids designed to overwhelm competition. Collectors who've been waiting years for an opportunity don't hesitate. They don't deliberate. They strike. And the prices that result from this kind of focused, informed, emotionally invested demand are prices that make outsiders gasp and insiders nod knowingly. The current market value of this coin is $90,000. $90,000 for a nickel. For a coin that was designed to buy 1/20th of a dollar's worth of goods and services. For a coin that most Americans alive today have never once in their lives stopped to examine before spending. $90,000 sitting in someone's change jar right now, growing darker and more toned with each passing year, waiting to be discovered or waiting to be lost forever. And the person who owns it doesn't know. They don't know because nobody told them. Nobody warned them. Nobody sat them down and said, listen to me carefully. The coin in your jar could buy a car, could eliminate your credit card debt, could fund your child's first year of college, could change the trajectory of your next decade. I'm telling you now, do not spend this coin. If you find a 1,977D Jefferson nickel, the protocol is critical and non-negotiable. Confirm the date. 1977. Confirm the mint mark. D. Below the date on the obverse. Assess the overall condition. Can you still see detail in Jefferson's hair? Can you still distinguish the columns of Monticello on the reverse? Is the lettering complete and legible? If yes, you're potentially in fine territory. Place the coin in a non-PVC holder immediately. Do not stack it. Do not carry it loose. Do not place it in a paper envelope where it might slide and scratch. Handle it exclusively by the edges. Your fingertips should never contact the obverse or reverse surfaces. Then find magnification. 10 power minimum. Study the lettering on both sides for any evidence of doubling. Study the mint mark for repunching. Study the fields for die cracks. Document what you see with photographs if possible, good lighting, stable camera, macro focus. And then contact PCGS or NGC to initiate professional grading. The fee is modest. The turnaround time varies. But the result, a professionally authenticated, encapsulated, graded coin with full attribution, is the key that unlocks the market. Without it, you have a nickel with a story. With it, you have $90,000 in a holder. And I want to leave you with the most important thought I can offer about the 1,977D Jefferson nickel. It's the same thought that applies to every coin I've discussed today, but it applies here with particular force because of the magnitude of the value involved. Patience creates wealth that urgency destroys. The collectors sitting on the highest value 1977 with D nickels today are not the ones who found them and immediately sold. They're the ones who found them, authenticated them, graded them, and then did absolutely nothing. They waited, not passively, strategically. They understood that every year, every month, every week, the circulating population of 1,977D nickels was shrinking. Every coin spent at a gas station, every coin dropped in a tip jar, every coin swept off a nightstand into a trash bag. Each loss made their coin rarer. Each loss increased the gap between supply and demand. Each loss added invisible, silent, compounding value to the coin in their safe. Time is the most powerful force in the rare coin market. Not hype, not social media exposure, not auction theatrics. Time, the patient, relentless, unstoppable erosion of supply against a backdrop of growing demand. That's the equation. That's the secret. And the people who understand it, who really internalize it, who make financial decisions based on it, are the ones who turn 5-gram pieces of cupronickel into generational wealth. The 1970 Jefferson nickel in old fine condition is a ghost. It moves through the world without being seen. It sits in jars and drawers and pockets and rolls, perfectly disguised as the most forgettable denomination in American currency. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't whisper "pick me up" when you walk past it on a sidewalk. It just waits, quietly, patiently, for someone who knows what they're looking at, for someone who's been warned, for someone who understands that the most valuable things in this world are almost never the ones that look valuable. You've been warned. You understand. Now go look. Now everything I've shown you so far, every coin, every value, every story of accidental loss and quiet fortune, all of it has been leading to what comes next. The next coin on this list carries a date that most collectors have dismissed for so long, ignored for so completely, overlooked with such confident indifference, that when the first graded examples began appearing at auction with verified die varieties and authenticated striking anomalies, the market reaction wasn't excitement. It was confusion. Then disbelief. Then something closer to fear. Because the implications of what this next coin represents for the Jefferson nickel series, for variety collecting, for every single person who has ever casually sorted through a handful of change, are so profound that some dealers I've spoken to believe it could reshape how the entire hobby approaches modern coinage. I've never said that about a coin before. I'm saying it now. Do not go anywhere. I want you to imagine something. Imagine your grandfather passed away. Imagine you're cleaning out his house, a small place, nothing fancy. Maybe a ranch-style home he bought in the 60s when houses cost what cars cost now. You're going through closets. You're sorting through decades of accumulated life. Old magazines. Tax returns from the 80s. A toolbox that hasn't been opened since Reagan was president. And in the back of a bedroom closet, behind a stack of shoeboxes filled with photographs nobody digitized, you find a coffee tin. An old Maxwell House tin, the blue one with the gold lid, dented on one side, sealed with a strip of masking tape that's turned brown and brittle with age. You peel it open. Inside, there's a folded handkerchief. Inside the handkerchief, there are coins. Maybe 20, maybe 30. Old ones, dark ones. Coins that smell like metal and time and a life lived quietly. And you almost dump them into the junk drawer with the rest of the loose change you've been collecting to take to the bank. You almost add them to the pile. You almost let them disappear into the anonymous river of American currency that flows through Coinstar machines and bank counting rooms and never comes back. But something stops you. Maybe it's the handkerchief. Maybe it's the fact that your grandfather wrapped these specific coins separately, deliberately, as if they mattered to him in a way the others didn't. Maybe it's intuition. Maybe it's luck. Whatever it is, you stop. You look. And sitting in that handkerchief, dark with 77 years of atmospheric toning, heavy with a patina so deep it looks almost black in certain light, is a 1947 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark. And that coin is worth $110,000. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That's not a number I inflated for dramatic effect. $110,000 for a coin that was manufactured to be worth 5 cents. For a coin that has been circulating, hiding, sleeping in jars and tins and drawers and pockets since Harry Truman was in the White House. For a coin that most people alive today have never even considered looking at twice. $110,000. And it's sitting somewhere right now, maybe in your house, maybe in a relative's house, Maybe in an estate that's about to be liquidated by people who have no idea what they're about to lose. This is not hype. This is a rescue mission. Let me take you back to 1947, and I need you to feel this year, not just know it. The Second World War had ended 2 years earlier. America had won. The boys had come home. The parades had been thrown. The kissing in Times Square photographs had been taken. But beneath the celebration, beneath the triumphant newsreels and the optimistic political speeches, the country was navigating a transition so massive and so psychologically complex that historians still argue about how America survived it without fracturing. 16 million military personnel were demobilizing. 16 million people who had been fed, housed, clothed, armed, and directed by the federal government for years were suddenly civilians again, flooding into an economy that had been retooled for war production and now needed to pivot back to consumer goods virtually overnight. Factories that had been making tanks needed to make refrigerators. Shipyards that had been building destroyers needed to build. What exactly? Nobody was entirely sure. Inflation was spiking. Price controls that had been in place during the war were being lifted, and the cost of basic goods, meat, bread, milk, housing, was surging in ways that made returning veterans and their families feel like the prosperity they'd been promised was a bait and switch. Labor strikes were erupting across the country. Coal miners, railroad workers, steel workers. The relationship between management and labor was a pressure cooker with the valve welded shut. And underneath all of this, the Cold War was beginning to crystallize. The Soviet Union, America's wartime ally, was rapidly becoming America's existential adversary. The atomic bomb, which had ended one nightmare, was spawning a new one. The possibility of global annihilation that would hover over American life for the next 4 decades like a permanent, invisible thundercloud. And in the middle of all of this chaos, the Philadelphia Mint was making nickels. And here's where it gets dangerous. The 1947 Jefferson nickel struck at Philadelphia carries no mint mark. None. This is critical to understand because the absence of a mint mark on this coin is not a mistake. It's not an error. It's a feature of the era. Philadelphia, as the primary and original United States mint facility, did not place a mint mark on its coins during this period. Denver used a D. San Francisco used an S. Philadelphia used silence. Nothing. The absence itself is the identifier. So when you're examining a 1947 Jefferson nickel, if you look below the date on the obverse and see empty space, no letter, no mark, no symbol, you are holding a Philadelphia strike. And that empty space, that quiet nothing beneath the date, is one of the most valuable absences in American numismatics. But wait, it gets worse. The Philadelphia Mint in 1947 was producing Jefferson nickels at an enormous rate, but the institutional focus was on economic stabilization, not numismatic quality. The war was over, but the wartime mentality of production at all costs still permeated the facility's operations. Dies were used until they couldn't be used anymore. Quality control was oriented toward preventing catastrophic errors, wrong planchets, dramatically off-center strikes, not toward catching subtle die varieties or minor striking anomalies. And in 1947, the dies were telling a story that nobody at the Mint was listening to. They were cracking. They were doubling during the hubbing process. They were wearing in patterns that created micro-variations from one coin to the next, variations so small that they were invisible to anyone who wasn't specifically trained to see them and specifically looking for them with magnification equipment that most Americans in 1947 didn't own and wouldn't have thought to use on a 5-cent coin. Stay with me, because the design of this coin carries a historical weight that makes it different from every other nickel I've discussed today. The obverse of the 1947 Jefferson nickel presents the same left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson that Felix Schlag designed in 1938, but in 1947, that design was only 9 years old. 9 years. The series was still young. The master hub was still relatively fresh compared to what it would become decades later. The portrait of Jefferson on a well-struck 1947 nickel has a sharpness, a crispness, a clarity of intent that later year strikes sometimes lack due to hub degradation over time. Jefferson's brow is pronounced and clean. His eye socket carries genuine depth. You can almost feel the shadow beneath his brow ridge. His nose cuts a sharp, uncompromising line. His lips are defined, not mushy. The queue of his hair shows individual strand separation that on the best strikes resembles fine engraving more than mass-produced coinage. Above the portrait, "In God We Trust" follows the upper rim with a deliberateness that feels almost ceremonial. And remember, in 1947, those words carried a particular resonance for a nation that had just survived a war that killed over 400,000 American soldiers. Below and to the left, liberty descends vertically, and beneath it, the date 1947. And below the date, nothing. No mint mark. Just the flat, empty field of the coin. That emptiness is Philadelphia's signature, and on this coin, it's worth more than most people's annual salary. This tiny detail changes everything. Now turn the coin over, and I want you to look at Monticello the way Jefferson himself would have, not as decoration, but as philosophy made physical. The reverse of the 1947 nickel shows Jefferson's plantation home in the same front elevation view that Felix Schlag reluctantly redesigned after the Mint rejected his original three-quarter perspective. The dome sits at the center of the roofline, and on a 1947 strike from fresh dyes, that dome has a roundness, a dimensionality that almost tricks your eye into seeing 3 dimensions on a flat surface. The 4 columns of the east portico stand with classical precision, and on the specific dye varieties that collectors prize, those columns become diagnostic landmarks. A dye crack running through the second column from the left. A slight doubling in the capital at the top of the third column. A weakness in the base of the rightmost column indicating dye fatigue. These details are invisible to casual examination. They reveal themselves only to patience, magnification, and knowledge. Below the building, Monticello is inscribed with the same clean authority it's carried since the series began. Below that, 5 cents. Along the upper rim, E pluribus unum. Along the lower rim, United States of America. Every letter, every word, every design element present and accounted for. But on the coins that matter, on the dye varieties and error strikes that separate a 5-cent spender from a 6-figure treasure, there are ghosts in those letters. Shadows, doublings, microscopic evidence of mechanical imperfection that the Philadelphia Mint never intended to release and never knew it had. Let me talk about what this coin is physically, because its humility is part of its disguise. The 1947 Jefferson nickel is struck on a planchet of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This is the standard post-war composition. The Mint had returned to the traditional cupronickel alloy after the wartime silver manganese copper nickels of 1942 to 1945. Those wartime nickels are famous. They're the ones with the large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse. People know about them. People look for them. But the 1947? The first full peacetime year of the restored cupronickel composition? Nobody looks for it. Nobody thinks twice about it. And that collective blind spot is a goldmine for the people who know better. The coin weighs 5 grams. Diameter, 21.21 millimeters. Thickness, 1.95 millimeters. Girth, The total circumference around the plain, smooth, unreeded edge, approximately 66.6 millimeters. Identical specifications to every other standard Jefferson nickel in the series. Identical weight, identical dimensions, identical feel in the hand. There is nothing about the physical experience of holding a 1947 no-mint marked Jefferson nickel that would alert you to its value. Nothing that would make your fingers tingle or your palm itch or your instincts fire. It feels like 5 cents. It weighs like 5 cents. It looks, to the untrained eye, like 5 cents. And that sensory deception is the reason people have been losing this coin for 77 years. And here's what most people never notice. The old look fine condition of this coin, roughly fine 12 to fine 15 on the Sheldon scale, with the old look descriptor indicating natural, long-term toning and surface character consistent with decades of aging, is a condition that makes the coin look, to an uninformed person, like junk. I need you to hear that word, junk, because that's the word people use when they see a dark, worn, 77-year-old nickel with mottled toning and softened details. They see it, and their brain categorizes it immediately. Old, used, damaged, worthless. Every one of those categorizations is wrong. Dangerously, expensively, life-alteringly wrong. The darkness is natural toning. The softened details are honest wear from genuine circulation. The mottled surface is the patina of 7.5 decades of atmospheric interaction. And the overall old look is the single most powerful authenticity marker a coin can possess. It is proof, visible and undeniable, that this coin has not been cleaned, not been dipped, not been polished, not been altered in any way since it left the Philadelphia Mint in 1947. And that proof, that visual evidence of untouched originality, is worth a fortune to every serious collector and every professional grading service on the planet. Let me be painfully specific about what cleaning would do to this coin, because with a value of $110,000 at stake, the consequences of ignorance are devastating beyond description. If you find a 1947 no-mint marked Jefferson nickel with original old toning and fine level detail, and you decide to clean it for any reason, using any method, with any substance, you will convert $110,000 into a coin that might, generously, be worth $50 to $75 on a good day in a forgiving market. That's not a reduction. That's an annihilation. That's a 99.9% destruction of value executed with a cotton ball and some vinegar in under 60 seconds. The original toning on this coin is not hiding its beauty. The original toning is its beauty. It is the beauty that collectors pay 6 figures for. It is the beauty that proves the coin is real, is original, is untampered, is exactly what it claims to be. Remove that toning and you remove the coin's credibility. You remove its provenance. You remove its soul. And no amount of regret, no amount of wishing, no amount of trying to retone it artificially will bring it back. The damage is permanent. The loss is total. The lesson costs $110,000. Do not clean this coin. Do not touch its surfaces. Do not breathe on it. Handle it by the edges, over a padded surface, and get it into an archival safe holder before your own humanity betrays you. Now let me tell you about the collector psychology surrounding this specific coin, because it operates on a level that borders on obsession. This is not hype. The 1947 no-mint marked Jefferson nickel occupies a unique position in the hierarchy of the series. It's a post-war coin. It's a Philadelphia strike. It carries no mint mark, which gives it a visual cleanliness, an uninterrupted aesthetic on the obverse that coins with a D or S mint mark don't share. And it comes from a year that represents, symbolically and historically, the beginning of modern America. The America of suburbs and highways and television and consumer culture and Cold War anxiety and nuclear families. All of it traces its origin to the years immediately following World War II, and 1947 is ground zero. Collectors who pursue this coin aren't just acquiring a piece of metal. They're acquiring a timestamp, a physical artifact of the moment when America pivoted from wartime survival to peacetime ambition. And that historical resonance, combined with genuine numismatic rarity in the form of die varieties and low survival populations in original fine condition, creates a demand profile that is intense, focused, and merciless. The auction dynamics for this coin are predatory. There is no other word. When a verified, graded, original surface 1947 no mint mark Jefferson nickel in fine condition appears on the market, the bidding reveals something uncomfortable about human nature. Collectors don't just want this coin. They need it. It fills a hole in their collection that nothing else can fill. It completes a narrative. It anchors a set. And because the supply is so constrained, because so few examples survive in original, uncleaned, properly attributed condition, the competition for each available specimen is ferocious. I've spoken with auction house representatives who describe the bidding on high-grade Jefferson nickel varieties as some of the most emotionally charged activity they witness across all categories of collectibles. Not gold, not silver, not ancient coins. Nickels, 5-cent pieces. Coins that fit on your thumbnail. That's what's generating the most intense collector warfare in the room. And the supply situation is terminal. I use that word deliberately. Terminal. The number of surviving 1947 no mint mark Jefferson nickels in original fine condition with collectible die varieties is not growing. It cannot grow. It can only shrink. Every day, coins are lost. Every day, coins are cleaned by well-meaning people who don't know what they're doing. Every day, coins are spent at face value by people who see 5 cents of metal and nothing more. The attrition is constant, invisible, and irreversible. And against that shrinking supply, the collector base is expanding. More information is available. More people are educated. More people are checking dates and mint marks and examining their change with magnification. The asymmetry between supply and demand is not a trend. It's a mathematical inevitability. And it's driving the value of surviving examples upward with a force that shows no sign of weakening. The market value of this coin is $110,000. I want that number to sit in your chest like a stone. $110,000. For a coin your grandmother might have used to buy a newspaper in 1952. For a coin that's been circulating through the American economy since Truman was president. For a coin that looks, to everyone who doesn't know better, like the most worthless piece of metal in any jar of change. $110,000 that someone is going to lose this month. Maybe this week. Maybe today. Because they didn't know. Because nobody told them. Because the gap between what this coin looks like and what this coin is worth is so vast, so incomprehensible, so fundamentally at odds with every assumption people make about money, that the truth feels like fiction. But it's not fiction. It's the most expensive open secret in American numismatics. Do not spend this coin. If you find a 1947 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, in any condition, do the following immediately. Set it aside. Do not mix it with other coins. Do not carry it in your pocket. Place it on a soft, clean, lint-free surface. Confirm the date, 1947. Confirm the absence of a mint mark below the date on the obverse. Assess the condition. Can you still read Liberty? Can you still see the outline of Jefferson's portrait with reasonable detail? Can you identify Monticello's columns on the reverse, even if they're softened? If yes, you may be in fine territory or better. Examine the coin under magnification. 10 power minimum, 20 power preferred. Study every letter on both sides for doubling. Study the fields for die cracks. Study the date numerals for repunching. Document everything with photographs. Then contact PCGS or NGC for professional grading and attribution. This is the step that transforms a coin from an interesting find into a market-recognized asset. Without professional grading, you're holding a possibility. With professional grading, you're holding $110,000 in a tamper-evident slab that the entire collecting world respects and recognizes. And patience. Always patience. The collectors who will profit most from the 1947 no-mint Mark Jefferson nickel are not the ones who sell immediately upon discovery. They're the ones who acquire, authenticate, protect, and wait. Wait for the supply to contract further. Wait for the collector base to expand further. Wait for the historical significance of 1947 to deepen as the post-war generation passes and the nostalgia premium compounds. Wait for time, the most powerful force in numismatics, to do what it always does. Make rare things rarer, make scarce things scarcer, and make patient people wealthier than they ever imagined a nickel could make them. The 1947 no-mint Mark Jefferson nickel doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shine. It doesn't feel special in your hand. It feels like 77 years of being ignored. It feels like a coin that the world has written off, discarded, and forgotten. And that feeling, that universal, reflexive, devastating underestimation, is the reason it's worth $110,000 and the reason people keep losing it. Every single day, in every state, in every city, in every jar and drawer and pocket and purse in America. You know what to look for now. You know what's at stake. The question is whether you'll act on what you know or become another story about the one that got away. Don't become that story. You just watched 5 Jefferson nickels reveal themselves for what they truly are. Not pocket change. Not forgotten relics. Not financial footnotes. These are hidden fortunes disguised as the most forgettable denomination in American currency. A 1997 with P worth $45,000. A 1987 with D worth $65,000. A 1985 with P worth $70,000. A 1977 with D worth $90,000. And a 1947 no-mint Mark worth $110,000. 5 coins. 5 secrets. 5 opportunities that millions of Americans are losing every single day because nobody ever told them the truth. Now, somebody has. I want you to think about every jar of change you've ever ignored. Every handful of coins you've dumped on a counter without looking. Every nickel you've tossed into a tip cup, or a wishing fountain, or a Coin Star machine without a second glance. How many of those coins carried a date ending in 7? How many of them had a mint mark you never checked? How many of them were dark and worn and old-looking, exactly the kind of coin you dismiss as worthless, and were actually worth more than your car, your savings, your next 5 years of rent? You'll never know. That's the terrifying truth. You'll never know what you've already lost. But you can control what you lose from this moment forward. Check your change. Every coin. Every time. Check the date. Check the mint mark. Check the condition. Use a loop. Use magnification. Use the knowledge you now have that most people don't. And when you find something, when that date lines up and that mint mark matches and your hands start to tremble slightly because you realize what you might be holding, do not clean it. Do not rub it. Do not show it to someone who doesn't understand its value. Protect it. Authenticate it. Grade it professionally. And then be patient. Because patience in this hobby is not a virtue. It's a wealth-building strategy that compounds silently while the rest of the world sleeps. Now, if this video opened your eyes, if it changed the way you think about the coins in your pocket, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Because what I'm working on next is something I've never done before on this channel. I'm building a list of coins so rare, so undervalued, so aggressively ignored by mainstream collectors that when I release it, the comments section is going to look like a crime scene of regret from people who spent these coins last week. I'm not exaggerating. The coins in the next video make some of what I showed you today look like a warm-up. And if you're not subscribed, if you're not notified, if you miss that video by even a day, someone else will find the coin you were supposed to find. Someone else will check the jar you were supposed to check. Someone else will take the fortune that was supposed to be yours. Don't let that happen. Subscribe. Stay sharp. And for the love of everything, stop spending your nickels. I'll see you in the next one.